Foundation Incorporated in cooperation with District 17 Area 1 cordially invites you to stay with us. Hear this webinar titled Onwards, Philippine Medical and Legal Warriors Against VAWC, Part 1. And our speaker today is Dr. Pauline Convocar, MD, FPCPM. She is with Emergency Medicine at Manila Doctors Hospital and CLMMRH Hospital in Bacolod and SPMC in Davao. She was the immediate past president of the College of Emergency Medicine from 2019 to 2021, and she is a Bravo awardee of Women in Science and Technology by Zonta Manila in 2020. In this talk, so Pauline has a very long, impressive biodata, but I just chose the most important ones. And I would like to add that she is a heroine, a medical doctor who has devoted her life to the barrios. In this talk, which will be followed by an open forum, we will hear it through the lens of an emergency medicine physician, Dr. Pauline, their roles and responsibilities as the last line of defense, their advocacies, and how breaking their silence can empower those who are vulnerable. And then we can discuss how Zonta can help her and her colleagues in this fight against violence against women and children. Anyway, at this point, I will stop sharing my screen and yield the floor to our speaker. Let us please welcome Dr. Pauline Convocar.
Thank you very much once again, Ma'am. Super overwhelmed. And since this is quite a small group, if I may be permitted to also be a bit informal and personal in my sharing, although the title of my talk today is The Empowering the Vulnerable, and specifically it's about violence against women and our experiences in the emergency department. But of course, there are also other vulnerable groups like the children, the elderly, and our indigenous brethren. But the disclaimer is that I'll be sharing my stories and a bit of inspiration perhaps of where we are working as an emergency medicine physician. So special shout out to a colleague of mine who's amazingly also with us today. So for my disclosures, I am a woman, so my perspective is really that of a woman, but not just a woman, but an empowered woman. And I'll add on to that layer, I am a Bravo empowered woman. So I think I may have very strong statements that may be a bit, shall we say, rocking the boat for some, because I'm not afraid of sharing my thoughts and speaking my mind. So a bit of, parang I'm a bit cautious because sometimes I really do not think and I just really speak my mind being this. But I'm also very much honored to have this award as the 2021 awardee, and it's really an honor. For the present, I know that Giselle already presented to you the outline of the presentation, but nevertheless, it's all about sharing to you what the burden and context of violence against women and children in the Philippines is our role in our role and responsibilities as emergency medicine physicians, some of our advocacies, and some directions, and as Ma'am Giselle also presented, how we may be able to collaborate. So perhaps some asks on our end. So probably let's start with the context on why we have this issue. It's not really very far from our folklore and our myths. We have this story of Malakas and Maganda, or the strong and the beautiful, which says in the creation story that Malakas and Maganda were born out of a bamboo stalk cracked open by Bathala, which is a mythical bird impersonated in Ibo Adarna. With malakas, being strong, becoming the first man, and maganda, becoming the first woman. But then, the story is that we forget that men can also be beautiful and vulnerable, and women can also be strong and tough. Our pagkalalaki at pagkababae, masculinity and femininity should not be limited by society's typecasts. So that's my initial context. And that you all know that Heidelin Diaz won, we had our first Olympic gold. And sa pagkababae mong tao, usually we always hear those words like sa pagkababae mong tao. But then passion and gender, we don't have gender for passion. So Filipino Olympians break these gender stereotypes. So having said that, we know that gender by itself is really a complex biosocial construct that constitutes a key health determinant. Women are naturally disadvantaged by nature, but it should not be that way. So it takes a very different perspective to look at the problem globally, that 1 in 3 women have experiences of violence, be it physical or sexual. And even in the Western Pacific region alone, we have 1 out of 4 women having that. And we all know that with violence, they have separate impact as well on health. So 2 times, if you've had experiences with violence, twice is the likelihood that they develop depression and alcoholism, and 1.5 times more likely to have sexually transmitted infections, and some 38 to 42% really lead to severe injuries and deaths, and other health sequelae or complications. So let's not go through that process, but these are all the medical problems that a woman may encounter when they've had history of violence. All right. So in the Philippines, this was the data presented, and that in an entire lifetime of a woman, we have 1.5 chances of having an event that may be a physical or a sexual intimate partner violence. So that's highly likely, be it like verbal abuse, physical abuse, or sexual abuse with a partner. So it's 148% in an entire lifetime of a woman. And even the Philippine Statistical Authority reported such things as well, that these are the reported cases of violence against women from 2018 to 2019. So this is quite a number. And these are the causes or the forms of violence that a woman may have. This was reported in 2017. These are really numbers that need to be looked at, since most of them are underreported and underrecognized. And mostly, they do not present actually in the emergency department. Only 1 of 10 people go to the hospital. So they're really underreported. And once they do go and once they do seek consult, may hiya pa yon. So the formal health seeking rates were very, very low among survivors of intimate partner violence in the Philippines. And the likelihood that they seek consult, it's because of the severity of the abuse they experienced. So this is something to do about the capability, the competency, and even cultural sensitivity of our country. So just imagine if you get 1 case in the emergency department, that's a very brave woman disclosing an abuse. So it's really underreported. So we do have some guidelines as to how we approach people who seek help in the emergency department or in the hospital. So here, WHO has released a very good guideline as to how facilities may really be capable. But unfortunately, not all of our facilities are, of course, capable. So some don't have doctors even. We don't have competent or trained healthcare providers. Sometimes confidentiality is not guaranteed. We're very congested in the hospital, in the emergency department. And sometimes we also don't have a referral system. So we have limitations as to where we'll only be able to manage the case and have to refer for definitive care. Fortunately, though, the Philippines invested on WCPUs, like Women and Children Protection Units across the country. So most hospitals, by virtue of an administrative order, already have WCPUs. But we all know the realities that not all of them are also very much equipped. So we have to have also a stand as to how we will be able to break the silence, stop the violence, and we all have something to contribute wherever we are and whoever we are. Because we know that the problem may be global, national, or even systemic, but we can do our share as an individual, as a group, or even as a profession. So I'm saying this because the emergency department or the emergency medicine in nature has a unique role. The emergency department is actually open 24 hours, 7 days a week. We don't have holidays. We go on duty on New Year. I'm duty on Christmas and New Year, on New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve this year. So that's a reality of life because it just so happens that this year, my duty falls on those holidays. But by nature, emergency departments really are always open. So we are the safety net of the public health system when they do come. And we cannot turn them away, and we should not turn them away. So we are actually natural allies of public health. So that's how I take my specialty, and that's how I take our role in the emergency department, because we're natural allies of public health. If there are cracks in the system, we are the safety net. So they go to us. They don't have access to other facilities, so they go to the emergency department. And we are witnesses to daily preventable tragedies, like these cases of violence against women and children and the vulnerable. So we're really uniquely qualified as advocates for effective measures to reduce the injury rates. So advocacy should come naturally to emergency medicine. But do you know that emergency medicine is not confined in space limitations? We can practice emergency care even outside the emergency department. So we wanted to also educate the public that we wanted to do away with the word ER, or which is actually a misnomer and obsolete, because it is not really just a room. There's so many rooms in the entire department. Actually, not confined by space, the nature of our job, and it's actually in a continuum. So if you see this, emergency care can be done in all phases of injury, even from the time of the event or the illness or the injury. And even in transit, care is continued until it reaches the hospital or the emergency unit. But the very important, all of these are important, but one very important step is actually the handover, which is the first point of contact of that patient entering into a healthcare system or the hospital. So that is why emergency care should be seen not in a confined space, but in a continuum. And you just imagine the journey of a patient who's have had physical injuries from the home to the hospital to definitive care, and that care should be continued. So we know that the Philippines is actually very unique and very known being in a disaster-prone region, right? So there's the Pacific Ring of Fire. We have plenty of volcanoes. We have typhoons every day, which makes us actually being an archipelago as well, having so many islands. We actually now have 7,641 islands, and we have 110 million Filipinos. But do you also know that there are only 450 of us emergency physicians in the entire country? So that makes us only 1:245 Filipinos. And most of us are actually based in the urban centers because that's where we are, that's where we work. That's the reason why part of our advocacy is also narrowing that gap. We're trying to develop training programs across the country in the regions like in Davao, in Bacolod, in Cebu, in Tacloban, and in Pampanga, so that emergency care is also not compromised. Because as I've said, it's the first link to the formal healthcare system of our country. So the Philippines may be known as disaster specialists. Our country is really known for that. but not a country prioritizing emergency care. And there's a very thin line, a very hairline difference between emergency and disaster. And you all know that, and we all experienced that during COVID. For now, despite our growth, in 1983, we started our programs, but there was this big, steep rise. In 2011, when we had our merger of the two societies, of course, we have our own in PGH, and we also have in Makati Med, in St. Luke. So we now are merged into one society, the Philippine College of Emergency Medicine, in 2011. And we saw a very dynamic interest in emergency medicine, and we've developed emergency training programs across the country. So you saw here all of those bullets now moving southward and northward to develop now 21 training programs, but still not enough. As of now, there are only 150 residents in training, and we have a very low passing rate for diplomates and fellowships because of the difficult nature of our specialty. And you just imagine we only have like 15 to 20 something or so average of graduates in a year. And so the gap may be a bit narrow, but still very slow in doing that. So fortunately, despite that, and just the next few pictures, we just show you what we are doing. So since we are in an emergency, we see and we do procedures in different settings. So this one is in Bacolod, this one is in pre-hospital care, and we can do emergency care even on the streets. So you saw here, you're seeing here, care in an ambulance, care in transit, care in tents, right? So we do mentor different levels of residents in training. So this one is in Davao for our EMS, and this one is in Bacolod. And also in austere situations like in COVID, of course, as you can see here, one care being done in a tent. So that's how we are. That's how we do stuff. That's our discipline. And we all know what happened in COVID and how our specialty was thrust in the limelight, being the safety net and being the one who went there, who really went there in the front lines. So this is what happened in 2020, 2021, I actually lost 2 years of my presidency because of this. I did not feel that I was really, up midnight. Probably that's also one reason why I got the award. But in 2019 to 2021 was really not good term for me. But we saw the 2 years through. And we know that when there is crisis, emergency medicine need to make tough decisions. We should receive life-saving care first. And we had to make we had to make tough choices. We have to triage because we have to choose patients to come in and to accommodate. So you all are familiar with these pictures. And you know that despite this, there are still patients who come to us with stories of violence against women and children. So that's just my sharing that despite all of this, imagine kasagsagan ng COVID, critical levels of occupancy rate, emergency departments closing down, right? Emergency departments closing down, celebrating women who were women warriors of COVID. Despite that, we were the canaries in the healthcare system. We were the ones who were always asked, are you still okay? Are you still okay? Because once we say we're not okay, that's when we can really determine that there's failure in the system, there's an overwhelmed system. So every time we're asked, we'll just answer, kakayanin. Hindi namin talaga sinasagot na hindi kinakaya, kinakaya at kakayanin. Parating ganun yung sagot namin. Because that's how emergency medicine is. As what we say, yun na nga, sinabi namin, EM the brave. We were the first to stand, first to respond to a call, but also, hopefully, the last to fall. So yon. We were there to contend with being still the best, doing the best for our patients, doing the best and whatever we can for the patients that come to us, for the most number of people that we can save, with the least amount of resources that we have, by the fewest number of staff, nurses and doctors. So this is how parang feeling ko nga, sabi ko nga noon, I was trained for this. Ito pala yung bakit pala ganito ang kasagsagan ng training ko noon. But then it's true, because when the time comes that it is really needed that you have to make tough choices, this was the mantra. This was what we had to carry every day of our lives. Just doing the best that we can for the most number of patients that we could save with the least amount of resources by the fewest number of people that we have. Right? So it's all about also putting the right patient, directing them to the right place, the right care provider. And reports still show, despite all of these things happening in COVID, the national police still reported that during the lockdown, the abused women and children became more vulnerable, and they still reported cases during those times. And because we have limited access, because they're not allowed to go out of their homes, the abuse continues. And when other people just, have these opportunities to really go, their stories are really severe, right? So that's how the advocacies of emergency medicine was also born. So we developed also, we understood the problem, we recognized the problem already, but we also amongst ourselves should recognize our own stereotypes and our own biases. Kasi baka pagdating pa nga, parang sasabihin mo, kasalanan pa ng babae o kasalanan ng bata yan dahil ganito. So it's always, advocacy is also about recognizing that you have your own biases as well, you have your own stereotypes as well, and recognizing also that there really is a problem. That's the first step. And advocacy can be somehow looked into as something that you wanted to change what is current or what is, moving that to what should be and what could be. So that's how we see advocacy in EM. And we recognize that it's even in the Constitution inherently put there that we have to recognize the role of women in nation building and to ensure the fundamental equality before the law of women and men. And in fact, our last face-to-face in emergency medicine was all about uplifting the nation's healthcare through emergency medicine advocacies. So we have a lot. We have advocacy for trauma, advocacy for gender equality and empowerment. We have even road safety, so many to mention. So in our roadmap, our 10-year roadmap, we have established here all of our key strategic priorities, but highlighting here just one. Among welfare impact and outcomes, collaboration and working with others, is all about equity, equality, and empowerment. And we wanted to also just not think outside the box, but think that there is no box. We don't have anything. We don't have very, very limited resources. There's only 450 of us, right? So there's a louder voice with greater numbers. So that's why we also wanted to really collaborate and network, because when you come together, it's really a louder voice, and there may be a greater chance that you'll be listened to. So we already know that VAWC, or violence against women and children, is a significant public health issue. And in fact, it is a silent pandemic. And that recognition that there is a problem is the first key. It may sound cliche, but that's how we also do that. The very important thing that we should do is to recognize or to have that high index of suspicion that there might be a problem. There may be dynamics that's not that very visible. And also, it's not just violence against women and children. There's a lot of spectrum across all gender sensitivity issues, like discrimination at the workplace, gender sensitivity training and awareness, even sexual harassment in the workplace, even hospital or institute rules and regulations, women leadership, for example, equal opportunities. We're trying to revisit also how we admit or screen our trainees for emergency medicine. Do they have equal opportunities? Were they being asked, are you married? Do you have a boyfriend? Is that even relevant for the job? right? So for those questions that somehow we in the past are not really recognizing that it's actually already a sexist question, right? So we should be very cognizant and mindful of these sexual harassment potentiality in the workplace. And more so, since our patients are at the center of our service, gender discrimination in patient care should also be always considered at all times. So, sometimes, or oftentimes even, the emergency department is the first and sometimes the only place where women interact with the health system. And it takes really a big deal of courage to really seek help and disclose. So, for the doctors, we have this thing as noting the injury patterns. So, if they're inconsistent, if they're like, the story is really off, hinatak lang ng boyfriend, nagreklamo, tapos hindi makakwento dahil ng boyfriend din nandun. So you should create a space, a safe space for the woman or for the person to disclose. So it takes a lot of detective profile of a doctor also to really detect and manage these non-visible injuries of these patients, and asking the right questions, just asking the right questions and at the right place. Because they really do not disclose. They just say napaso, na hulog, na untog, and then you have to probe. You really have to probe, and sometimes they really do not disclose. So screening in health care settings is recommended but really underperformed. Good thing that we should start somewhere and start where you are, use what we have, and do what we can. So now we have authored and released the Manual of Standards and Guidelines on the Management of the Hospital Emergency Department, where in Section 7, it's really explicitly put. I will not talk about the laws and the mandates here. That's for Kat to speak on. But for this particular part, since this is an institutional policy that may be cascaded by the Department of Health, it's good that here they already recognize that all EDs or all hospitals should have a place for WCPUs, right? So this chapter, the Section 7 in this book, provides the guidance on special situations like women and children and the vulnerable, mass casualty, the surge capacity, and other medical examination of apprehended persons, because human rights also, for those who are apprehended and for detention, need also to be examined for potential human rights violation. So here in this guide, there's this administrative order 2013-11 for the revised policy on the establishment of WCPUs in all hospitals. All right. We have all WCPUs, but the next question also is, are they equipped? Do they have trained personnel? Do they have equipment to do their examination, to examine, to really screen patients? So all of these things are put in the guide, but there's a separate AO where we may also revisit if to evaluate several WCPUs in the country. So what it just states there is that it should be readily available and accessible 24/7 and located in the emergency department where there are no doors. So we were even asked before, can you imagine an emergency department with no doors? Because technically it's really open. It's like 7-Eleven where do you keep the key? Do not close the emergency department. Even if they say we close because we're full, it's not true, because we really still accept patients even on the floors, right? So it's stated here that it must be spacious enough, it ensures privacy, and the reception should have
Yay, ako bahala doon.
sensitive environment, right? And
Oo, sabi
should
ko
have
sila lahat.
materials and VAWC. All right. So this includes for children a special place for a playroom and non-traumatic supplies and equipment for medical examination. For people who cannot go home, There are some WCPUs who provide a dormitory for them where they can stay and be separated from their alleged perpetrators. And of course, we have to have kits there, equipment to test if they do have, if as part of the examination of an assault. So all of these are in the context of having structure, equipment, of course, trained personnel, competent enough to include all the specialists as well, right? So these are on the structure systems, health systems part. But on the individual part, it also takes a lot of training to be just mindful. You know, sometimes with us, even with us, it's part of advocacy as well. Like when we say a rape victim, when you just pause for a moment and just listen to the word rape victim, it's like a victim is really helpless with, right? So very helpless and a victim. But when you say a sexual assault survivor, there's like hope and empowering tone to the words. So just being mindful as well with our language, referring to those survivors, really help a lot. And terminology is very crucial in framing gendered responses to all of those health programs that we have. Say, for example, we used to call intimate partner violence. It denotes relationship. What if there's no intimate relationship? Right? Or even domestic violence. What if it happens outside the home? So we just have to also revisit how we look at those terminologies and find perhaps more gender sensitive terminologies that may best define or describe our patients. Another mindfulness thing that we need to also look into is, of course, our numbers. So we know that, of course, sometimes when we do invite people for conferences, we are not really that mindful as to how many males or females that we invite, if we're diverse, if we're really inclusive, we just invite people. So being mindful also about closing this gap of inequality is just counting the numbers. So there's a 50-50 there's a program that just revisiting your workplace and just counting the numbers of how many males or females in your workplace is an effective advocacy. So that's what we did in emergency medicine. We looked at our members and leaders by the numbers. It's almost the same. So we're like also like inclusive and diverse. But when we look at the leaders, there's really more males than females. So if you look at these numbers, the following numbers, this is the PISM Board of Directors by gender distribution. You still can see men leaders predominating. Even with faculty gender distribution, right? So 13 male chairs as to 6 female chairs, 12 training officers that are males and 7 training officers that are females. Just looking at these numbers speak a lot that we are mindful that maybe there's something wrong about recruitment, or like maybe we may improve on how we look at leadership roles, how women leaders progress through the ranks, and even look at our representations in PSM convention. So if you look at this, there's really predominantly male speakers or representations. So which leads us to being mindful, which leads us to awareness trainings. So we developed a section in emergency medicine for gender equity, equality, and empowerment. So we were commended by the International Federation of EM because we were one country member who developed our own section, and we had this first and pilot lang na training, and we wish to have more of these. Looking at our members and how we look at patients, how we do not discriminate, how we do not say derogatory and judgmental words, like say, for example, bakla. Tapos, for example, women who are commercial sex workers. So we're taught to be mindful, to be more sensitive. And on our end, we're also made to reflect on our own stereotypes and our own biases. And we're so surprised that even for an empowered woman and an empowered institution or an empowered organization, you'll be surprised you have your own biases and stereotypes as well. So we had this training, and at the end of our training, we had our 10 actionable steps. So we had here non-discriminatory patient care. So we're looking at establishing guidelines as to gender-specific emergencies and promotion of gender equality among emergency care healthcare professionals. So that's why we're looking at how we are recruiting, screening, and looking at the processes of how women leaders rise up the ranks, and creation of opportunities for gender sensitivity trainings, just like what we did for this GEE training. So let us always remember every time, wherever we are, whatever discipline we have, the vulnerable and the marginalized. So everything is connected. We have to invest really on this. And we cannot really underscore the importance of understanding that we are all connected to each other. So I'm just sharing this story of my Dr. to the Barrio days, when I'm like chocolate brown color and I'm like 50 kilograms weight at the time. But that's one experience that I was very, very happy and very, very fulfilled. Unfortunately, there are also stories there that make me think if it was really a bad thing to say goodbye, but it was a personal decision at the time. There were stories here of access issues. There were islets that cannot be visited. We had to really go through rough seas. This is in Surigao. And we had the chance of revisiting the place during the recent typhoon. And one of our projects there is doing the basic emergency care training for the community health workers. So we have already, this is from WHO, and we have already visited as far as Tawi-Tawi, Cotabato and Davao, and here in Siargao, of course in Bacolod, where I work. So these are just some of the pictures where we visited Tawi-Tawi, and we had, just can imagine how they will not be able to transfer their patients from here. So they really need the basic emergency care. So this was before the pandemic, but these were the pictures. And there are other tools out there. So I'll probably, towards the last end, it's actually more like life quotes than stories, but there are really tools out there, and the issue is just about how to give our people access, right? So we wanted to, of course, we're the last line of defense, and we wanted to protect that last line. We don't want them to reach us and overwhelm the system, but also that they're severe when they come. But also we have to strengthen the first line and have a sort of reporting system, even in the community, so that we'll be able to early on recognize that there's a problem. But also, there may be some systemic things to be done. We cannot control and we cannot do everything. We can only do with what we have. There's a systematic way of doing things, but we can also be strategic in our approach. We can only do something within our reach and our control. So that's how, even if we wanted to have a perspective of choosing to see the whole elephant as in the whole system, but we cannot solve the entire system. We can only choose one leg, if you may, and do it one leg at a time until we see the entire elephant. So maybe also I'll end with finding the hero within us and heroes among us. So I'm actually honestly very overwhelmed with your presence, because I've heard so much stories about what Zonta does. And I wanted to work more with you perhaps and be more inspired with you, but I'll share what my Lola said. So Lola Isa, if you probably know, is that she's the Joan of Arc of the Philippines. And she said that the situation in a country at a particular time creates its own breed of heroes and heroines, right? And at my time, at my generation, I am an emergencivist. I am a sister, a daughter, an advocate, a woman, and I have limitless capabilities. And I just borrow these words from George Eliot, who's actually a woman. So this is her pseudonym. That what do we live for if not to make life less difficult for each other? So I'll end here. And I know that my sharing is not really academic. I did not really share a journey of one particular patient, but I hope I was able to share for the members of Zonta. Perhaps I'll open the floor for discussion or for questions from you. But there's so many things that we, of course, collaborate with to make this place a better world, even for just our own small corner in this world. So maraming salamat po. Madami pa po tayong pag-uusapan. Pero thank you very much for the window of opportunity that you gave me to share my stories, to share my insights. Special mention po talaga kay Ma'am Giselle for giving me this time. Thank you very much.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you for all these things that you do for the country. What stands out to me is when you touch on the population of the country is 110 million. Islands is 7,600 and up. But you only have 450. Where does the government stand on this, past and present? Are you being supported? Are they aware that this has been happening? It's not just now. And does anybody represent you in the political arena? Is the president even aware? Or who is the person in charge of this problem? Like, this problem is all over the world. The abuse of women, the underprivileged, you name it, even here in the Western world. But this is disturbing to me that you only have 450 with 110 population. How can you take care of, what is this? 1:245,000? That's insane. I mean, you cannot go on like this. You're only one person. So what help do you get from the government is my concern and my question. Or do you even get it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ma'am Ruby, for that question. It's really, really, if I may say, tagos sa puso na tanong. Kasi during COVID, we had the opportunity of talking to government in different layers and different, of course, layers of government, from mayors to the secretary, to venues where we had this opportunity of sharing how we may frame, because the problem there before was actually about patient navigation. So it's actually the Philippine College of Emergency Medicine, if I may share, who presented a prototype of a patient navigation, because people don't know where to go. And we presented them the problem that although these are the 450 are emergency physicians, of course there are other physicians who are non-emergency doctors who also may be able to attend to the patients and to be in their posts in the hospitals. But not everyone understood that during those times, these doctors were pulled out from their duties. And so those emergency physicians were the ones who stood up and filled these posts. So at that time, we went to the secretary and presented our proposal, the prototype. So eventually it was developed into the One Hospital Command. One of our colleagues was then the director, who's now again the head of One DOH Bureau. For me, that's already a small win, being heard and having had this opportunity to share an idea that was developed into a system. Unfortunately, we know that it's not enough. A doctor may be a doctor and may be effective to a point, but we need nurses. So the issue is not about just the gap, the wide gap of having 1:1 a certain number of population. We still even have islands without doctors. So for me, that's it may be tagos sa puso na tanong, but I know I also recognize that I don't have all the answers to these things, and I need the help of government, and I need the help of a wider group of people who may have the voice, who may have the resources. And we also understand that we can't solve the entire elephant. So I'll start with the toe. So that's why the analogy of looking at the elephant, I can see the elephant. I know there's an elephant, but I can't solve the elephant for now. I'll just start at one toe. So that's probably perhaps that's how Hisem thinks also. And I'm not the president anymore. But since I still chair the section on advocacy, we're taking these baby steps. I'm not sure if I go to the president and he'll listen to me.
Why not?
I don't know. Maybe if I have the chance, maybe I'll just, pitch like 5 minutes of perhaps present to him the problem and propose solutions. It may be interesting to know how or what he thinks of the problem. But that would be very interesting.
Yeah, he should put all his attention because what did he promise the people of the Philippines? He's now sitting there. And these are the vulnerable people. Like you have people that are probably has not even seen a doctor in those
Yes.
remote areas. So it is very disturbing, but I salute you. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am Giselle?
Yes, if nobody else wants to ask a question at this point, may I ask Pauline, in which locality do you think you're making significant headway, and what were the initiatives that were put in place to say that to show that you are making progress, and are you monitoring it with data? So you're working in Manila Doctors linked closely with PGH. Then you have Bacolod and you have Davao, and then you have your College of Emergency Medicine. So you have your group. Is there a place that can be used as a model? Then how can you share your experience in this successful area virtually, say in e-training courses, okay, so that other areas will also improve in their handling of VAWC.
Thank you, Ma'am Giselle. For my two hospitals, these two hospitals are actually DOH hospitals. They're really, really big. They're trauma centers, actually. For Bacolod and SPMC, they're trauma centers, and they're the only referral centers in the regions. Currently, they're also the only hospitals who have emergency medicine training. So that's why I chose to fly every week or every other week, because I wanted to really develop these centers to clone myself, ma'am, if I may say that. Because we can't live forever and we have to have succession planning. So I'm very, very happy to say that we have now new graduates, junior consultants, and I think mentoring, ma'am, and wisdom from all those who came before us really, really helps. So kaya nga ma'am, kahit anong sabihin niyo, hindi tayo pagkapareho ng profession, I'm very, very amazed and very overwhelmed with your presence because ma'am, hindi, alam mo yun, naiiyak nga ako, parang sabihin pa, kahit anong sabihin mong current knowledge that we have will never surpass the wisdom that you have. So yun yung parati ko ring sinasabi sa mga mentees namin na, you'll surpass your mentors. But that is your bayad to your mentor, that you'll be another mentor to the next. So if your question, ma'am, is about documenting this, I think that the documentation is all about talk to my mentees or talk to our mentees, because I feel like we can really let them go. One mentee is now here. Luis, you're logged in. You're logged in, Zonta, Luis, but thank you so much. He's one of our new graduates in Bacolod City. So in Bacolod City, we're now 10 years. In SPMC, we're now 7 years. So actually, I can really let them go. That's a painful way to say goodbye, but that's a way also of saying that I'm not needed anymore. Ganon din, ma'am, yung iniyak ko nung nag-Dr. to the Barrio ako, na parang iiyak ka kasi you're not needed, but you know that the community is thriving. That's my gauge of living. So, but anyway, that's one, ma'am. And then the second, so the mentoring program is one, leadership among women mentees is one, and then we have our GEE, that's one. So if, kung magpapakapal ako ng mukha and I may ask for like training needs, that is one way also, ma'am, if you may want to take a mentee. Kasi a mentee may not necessarily be an emergency medicine doctor. Right? So if you may take on a mentee, life lessons, they'll very much appreciate it. So yun, Ma'am Giselle, I think that would be one. And then of course, our WCPUs, we do have our structures of reporting already. But siguro yun, ma'am, sa training also on early recognition and documentation of the injuries may really also help them. May I just call on muna, ma'am, nahiya po ako kay Ma'am Noni tsaka kay Ma'am Regina, because they've been raising their hand, nangangawit na po siguro. May I recognize po, Ma'am Noni? Ma'am Noni Pauline?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Pauline. Really appreciate, no? All what you have discussed are all aligned with our advocacy in SONTA. So, talagang kanina all ears ako. Nag-shot pa nga ako ng iba mong mga sinishare. So, I hope President Giselle would have a copy of that. Okay. So, magagamit namin yan in all our campaign against gender violence. Now, your organization is involved in both and government hospitals at present. Now, how is your organization being funded?
Okay.
Considering, to pursue your service and advocacy. Kasi kanina, based on the question of Ruby, no? Parang, kasi kami at least with SONTA, we know the ladies, the Sontians are donating, ganyan, and to help the international, the SONTA International. And then, about your organization, paano ang funding nyo, please?
Yeah, okay. Ma'am, yung organization namin is a medical society. So it's like the College of Cardiology, College of Physicians, but ours is a small society because we started really young. We're the youngest even perhaps among all medical societies, 1980s, that's still very young. So our funds really come from membership fees lang po, ma'am. So membership fees, when we do get some funds, like say some interested parties would like to sponsor a research committee, a research forum, or like say for example a leadership forum or a webinar series. We collaborate with the Philippine College, that's society, and talk to them. So I'm head of section of advocacy. Practically no funds. So we're of course it's advocacy, wala po talagang pera sa advocacy, but we make do with whatever it is. Nadadala po sa friendships and networks. So for those po na speakers namin with gender equality and empowerment, those are friends and those are networks. We invited them. We did not give them any honorarium whatsoever. The platform is free. But sometimes, of course, we have to give something like, say, like a token that has cost. So minsan talagang just being innovative and being resourceful with your relationships, with your social capital. But meron talaga pa rin, ma'am, cost. So sometimes yung nga po may face-to-face din talaga when needed talaga that they, like say for example, is a training on skill. Kailangan face-to-face yun kasi doctor-patient talaga na skill ang kailangan. Pero may mga paraan na nagagawa naman yung advocacy na with minimal fee. So yun yung example po namin, organ donation namin na advocacy. We team up with some societies as well. And then also with the different hospitals. So since the membership is about individual members and not po training institutions, the training institutions do not give if I may say, royalty to the college. It's really individual members, and that's a yearly thing. So, hindi po ganun talaga kayaman po yung ano namin. Hindi po kami ganun kalaki unlike perhaps the other society. So we just use the funds from membership dues. Yan po, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Pauline,
Sure, ma'am.
for that. At least we know now how our Zonta organization can maybe share part of that. The funds that you need. Thank you so much.
Yes, Ma'am Reg.
Okay. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Pauline. My question is, one is, you mentioned sponsoring a mentee. And I understand that the mentee need not be a doctor. The mentee is not a doctor.
No, ma'am, the mentee is a trainee doctor, but the mentor may not be a doctor.
Oh, okay. So let's say how much would be the cost for sponsoring a mentee?
Ma'am, actually, I'm not speaking even of financial mentoring. I mean, financial support, because these are already doctors in training. That what they probably need are life coaches. Now, if, for example, word of encouragement, a letter perhaps from you, or like a small muffin may be very appreciated by these kids. Ang kids lang tawag ko sa kanila, mga anak. But I mean, little gestures like these, ma'am, mean a lot. Sobrang ganun, ma'am, ang doktor na parang kung pagod na pagod, may dadating na juice. Ma'am. Pero what I'm saying is that, of course, mentoring has so many layers. This may be about professional mentoring, life mentoring, even relationships mentoring. Actually, nagla-light bulb lang ako, Ma'am Giselle, ngayon. Pero I've been looking at liaising with international societies for their professional mentoring. But for life coaches, I think this group, I'm looking at you right now, ma'am, I'm already overwhelmed. How much more your effect on them and their trainees, very young in their field, in their careers, and they need your wisdom and your guidance. So mga ano to, ma'am, sabihin na natin mga nasa mid-20s to early 30s and magki-quit. Sige, ma'am, how will we guide them? As a doctor, I may be able to talk to that person. Wag kang mag-quit kasi ganito. But there are people who love to hear stories from you, from leaders, from advocates. Yun, ma'am. Kaya nga nung kinakwentuhan ako ni Ma'am Giselle, sabi ko, naiyak na nga ako, ma'am, wala pa kayong sinasabi. Because that's the effect kasi of women leaders on young leaders as well. Just getting parang nag-kickstart pa lang in their careers. They're lost. They just need some guidance. So, pero if you're thinking about some project, for example, ma'am, that you want to support, they're actually doctors, they're professionals. But if you'd like, say, pagod na ba kayo? Would you like to go somewhere and just unwind? That would be okay, ma'am. But I don't want to also impose because that's not also, I think that's not also parang formally in the mentoring program, because a mentoring program is actually very informal naman. It's life coaching, professional coaching, and personal coaching po, ma'am.
So you think that Zonta can help?
Ma'am, yes!
I mean, like example, sponsoring training or giving
Yes,
some money
ma'am.
for aquarium or for, like a little recognition, but ganon, we can help there, di ba?
Yes, ma'am. You may po.
Yeah,
Thank you
because-
so much, ma'am.
Siyempre, hindi kami doktor. I mean, of course, marami kaming doktora. I mean, there are many doctors in Zonta, but I mean, not all of us are doctors, so we wouldn't be able to give them, advice. I suppose there are also some psychologists in our group, but and of course lawyers, but we're not doctors, so we can't really. All we can do is help you help them. Okay. Now, my other question is this: I think this, since you are usually the first responders, kasi medical yan, maybe even more than the lawyers or even the police. My question is this: when the assailant is a member of the family, like, for example, and it happens often, a father or a brother or another relative. I know it is a very difficult decision for the victim to make, no? Let's say to complain about this person, especially if it's a husband or a father, because first it will affect the family, meaning, you know, you will have to separate from your husband, and then the woman may probably need support, and that will mean discontinuation of the sport and all that. So how do you advise them on that, or how do you deal with that?
Ma'am, yung sa ano, yung sa typical, not a typical thing, but as in a consult, we follow a guide or a protocol as to the medical management of the case. Of course, the wounds, we tend to the wounds, to the medical emergencies first. And then, of course, we treat that patient as well as a social emergency. And we are obliged by law, maybe Ma'am Kat will be able to also talk about that. We're obliged by law to report. But it is up to the woman or to the person or to the patient to file a case. So there may be a blotter. We report to the security guard. Our own security guard already has this parang button. I mean that activation of a cascade of events, that when this is identified, we have to report to WCPU, Women's Desk of the Police, and it's always a one-stop shop that the social service, the police, and the doctor will have to report together. Tapos it is, parang ganun siya. And then if the perpetrator, the alleged suspect is there, we have to separate them. And if pwedeng i-admit yung patient or really separate them, that's why po, ma'am, the WCPUs are required to have dorms or like parang a room that they may even stay for a night or two because of this, because we have to separate them para hindi na po maulit yung nangyari.
Okay.
It's up to the woman to come back to their house if ever that's their dynamic.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Pauline. Thank you.
Are there any more questions from our participants? So, Dr. Pauline, I think there have been good suggestions here on how Zonta can help. Thing is, we could course it through you or through the College of Emergency Medicine. And it could be a case of incentives and awards, recognition of our mentors and the mentees who will become mentors, right? So there could be incentives that would come with some monetary award. There's nothing wrong with that, aside from an awarding ceremony, a certificate, and sharing of story of that outstanding mentor. That could be one. The other you mentioned would be well, perhaps support for some facilities in some emergency care units, say in a locality where you would have the direct supervision in Davao or in Bacolod. And well, I'm asking this question about DNA forensics analysis. In cases where there is, well, no clarity on who's the assailant. In some cases, the wife will deny that the husband is the assailant, but there's nothing more definitive than a DNA test. So is that also something that you would appreciate? You know that in the Visayas and Mindanao, UP has already set up Philippine Genome Centers where this DNA testing can be done. But the center of this all is actually in UP Diliman, in the National Research Science Institute, NSRI, DNA Forensic Laboratory. Then that's also possible in PGH in Manila. So I'd like to know, Pauline, if there were 3 things that we could help you with, what would they be? And it's not just Zonta Manila, because present here today is our area director, Noni Pauline, and presidents of other clubs in our area, Area 1. So, Pauline, how can we help you?
Ma'am, pag mga ganito, nahihiya na ako, ma'am. Pwede,
Ang mahihiya po rin kasi
nahihiya na ako. Nagpakapal na nga ako nung sinabi ko na yun, ma'am. But I think, ma'am, yes, I think, ma'am, you've parang ayan tuloy, speechless. Ma'am, I think it would be very helpful if indeed the support will be through the leadership track. Kasi we really need leaders to continue on the legacy. And then perhaps on the more concrete and immediate would be for the VAWC. The kits will be very, very helpful. Even materials po, ma'am, for information purposes, for advocacy purposes will be very helpful. For those naman, ma'am, na hindi naman sila survivors, wala namang events, empowering lang talaga, ma'am, the women, maybe through trainings, of course, and awareness campaigns. And materials may be developed perhaps with you or with your guidance also, or with partnership with the society. That can also be done. I'm still very excited about the mentoring program because parang wala pa nga kayo, ma'am, sinasabi, hindi to boladas, ma'am, na may epekto na nga kayo sa akin. How much more kung we will make it formal. So let's probably perhaps make something about it also. Maybe one of you we will invite and talk. So parang ganon, how was your journey also as a woman leader, or like, I don't know, ma'am, I'm just top of mind thing.
It's good.
But that is also one, apo. And then of course we may formalize a bit the relationship with perhaps really the section and advocacy, perhaps, and Zonta having a project together, maybe one. And the whistle is actually a good project. But just distributing this with kaakibat na information why this is important is already a project. So let's talk about that some more, ma'am. There's so limitless possibilities of working together.
I just wanted to ask Dr. Pauline, when you are asked to respond, like for example, during COVID, I know you're private doctors, you're not government doctors, right?
I am also a government doctor, Ma'am Red.
So are you compensated? Are you compensated? Because COVID may not be the last emergency. There may be other
Yes.
medical emergencies. There may be earthquakes that may be coming, and you will also be asked to respond. When you respond, are you compensated? Because many health workers, I think, have issues about having been properly compensated.
The compensation that we're talking about, ma'am, is not just about salary. The additional hazard-related work is not included, except for that provided by the current OCA and the HEA provisions. So those were just the additional ngayon hinahabol, but before, during that time, none, ma'am, because it's just like a response to a call of duty.
Oh, okay.
That was an issue during the height of COVID, that our health workers were not receiving their compensation, their extra compensation. Yes, so that's a very important point. We would like to present this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Pauline F. Convocar, the granddaughter of our Joan of Arc, a heroine in her time. Dr. Pauline is an MD and an FPCM, and today she delivered her webinar titled Onwards, Philippine Medical and Legal Warriors Against VAWC, the medical part of it. Pauline, we are here in Zonta to help build a better world for women and girls, and this is our new tagline. And we thank you for being at the forefront of this advocacy of Zonta in a very real, effective, and hardworking way. So you know what the problems are on the ground, and you have shared with us your experiences, your insights, your life's philosophy. I found your talk to be very philosophical, and you had with you none other than the thinker, Rodin's The Thinker. Okay? Meaning, you have been thinking about this all your life. And you are on your way achieving your life's goals and dreams. Let Zonta help you. Thank you very much.